Hey everyone, it's Kristen, and this is part 3 of the 64 Hexagrams challenge video series that I'm doing. So I'm covering 8 hexagrams at a time. This is a challenge that I'm using just to study the hexagrams kind of as a whole. I've been studying them more through the lens of the trigrams, but I really want to get a general view of them and look at them as pairs. I'm also looking at them from a numerology standpoint, using the binary to decimal number. I'm also looking at them through the time periods, the seasonal time periods, because I believe that I Ching is a calendar of days. And so I'm inviting everyone to join me. You can join me in any way that you like using the hashtag 64 hexagrams challenge. We also have a study space. I'll put the link down below. And in the study space, we're doing some really deep dives into some conversations, some really interesting perspectives. People are looking at it through the lens of human design and some other areas. And I'm sharing kind of like posts, articles. I'm sharing some of my personal readings because I think that all of that helps you to really understand the hexagrams more from a personal life kind of story. So today I'm looking at hexagrams 17 through 24. So we're going to start with 17 and 18, which are paired. If you look at the odd and even hexagrams, they are paired. And I'm always trying to understand, like, what does the pair do? Like, what does it, why? I mean, I understand the pairing is an opposite in some way, meaning if we look at hexagram 17, it's lake over thunder. If you were to take this and flip it upside down, you get mountain over wind. But I'm looking for, like, what are some other connections that we can see with this pair? So one thing that I noticed is that if we just start with hexagram 17, lake over thunder are two yang, what I consider two yang trigrams. But if we look at their nuclear trigrams, the ones that are inside, we get two yin trigrams. We get wind over mountain. So it's kind of like a very dynamic outer energy and a very yin, kind of calmer inner energy. And then we have just the reverse here. We have something that looks more calm on the outside, but inside is very dynamic. And so when we look at hexagram 17, the ideogram is said to be 3 footsteps, one following the other. And so the word following comes out of that. The etymology for this trigram is really, the word following is really used in terms of like following a way or a school or a religion, kind of more like following a school of thought. We can also see that if we convert these trigrams to people, we see the youngest daughter over the eldest son. And so in this case, the eldest son is kind of subordinating themselves to the youngest daughter or following in her footsteps. And I tried to depict something like that, but what I got here in this card, it's kind of more like a child following a parent or elder. So kind of like following in their ways, in their footsteps, or, you know, in their path. Like the one is showing the way. We can also look at this if you just think about the energy of thunder. We've got the energy of radical change. Thunder really wants to break up through this very calm, peaceful lake energy. And so it can signify potentially an impulsive action that may have far-reaching consequences and disturbances. So this hexagram is really about following rather than having to take the lead and be impulsive and do all the things. Now, when we look at 18, this one was really, really interesting to me because when you look at the ideogram, it's said to be poisonous insects in a jar. And I went and looked at the etymology, which also talks about poisonous worms in the stomach or in food. And it also references a curse or a spell. And when I read that, it sounded like, or it reminded me of the acupoint liver 5, which is called insect drain. And I'll show you a book that I use all the time, Spiritual Portraits of the Energy Release Points. I'll put a reference to this book below. I think I have it in my Amazon store. And some of the disharmonies of this point are frustration, aggravation, oversensitivities to foods, basically toxic environments, and also excessive focus on details or excessive focus on your vision of things, and which I think will come in. We'll see that kind of in the next two cards. But so this is why I named this one Poison. In a lot of references, I've seen this is about correcting corruption or correcting decay. But I don't really see a lot of the correction of this. So I'm perfectly happy with it just being poison. So one of the things that we look at is there. If we look at the lines, we have two yang lines, two strong. Think about yang as almost like heavier. Two yang lines on top of a yin line. So this would be kind of like on the outside something is strong, but on the inside it's weakened. And maybe it's weakened through like decay or deterioration. And so that's really what we're looking at with hexagram 18. So a situation that is kind of being, number one, obstructed by mountain, but also a situation that is internally weak. So let's look at arrival and viewing, what I'm calling arrival and viewing, hexagrams 19 and 20. And again, that sense of vision, which we really only got from the acupoint. I'd love to see if anybody has already associated any of the acupoints with the hexagrams. I know there is a source that has done that I've seen, but I always like to see the inner workings of these through other systems. So when we have hexagram 19, we're looking at earth over lake. And then if we were to turn it upside down, we get wind over earth, which is hexagram 20. So 19 is often called approach. I called it arrival because it's really showing the strong forces, the yang lines here, that are beginning to grow and increase. So we know that the hexagrams are built from the bottom line, this is line 1, up. And so anytime that you see a yang line in the first position, you know that you're moving into light from darkness. Anytime that you see a yin line at the bottom, like this one, you know that you're moving into a state of darkness. And that's just seasonally speaking, for example, not necessarily the energy of the hexagram, but just time periods. You would be moving here from winter solstice to summer solstice. From here, you know you're going to be moving from summer solstice into the winter solstice. So that's really the energy of this. And so this one, I call arrival because I'm associating it with the arrival of spring. If we look at it from a seasonal standpoint, time period is March 20th through the 26th, Aries energy, which is Aries is the first astrological sign. And that time period is the spring equinox. And so I put the cherry blossom trees in there to denote that symbolic connection to spring. What's interesting is the etymology of this hexagram is also its approach, oversee, inspect, and supervise. And so we look at the viewing, the looking of this. Maybe this also relates to looking at something with detail. And then we see its pair here in hexagram 20, which is about viewing really from a broader view. So This hexagram is typically called contemplation. The ideogram is said to be a bird, and the word for see, which could be watching birds or a bird's eye view. It's also said to represent a Taoist monastery, a tower, or an observatory. And if we look at it just from a visual standpoint, just looking at the lines as if they are creating a shape, we can see a watchtower. Like it actually looks like a tower of some sort. And so if we think about a watchtower, it's a place where you can view from a bird's eye, like from a bird's perspective, or gain like a higher view or a big picture. But it's also thinking about viewing things in terms of contemplating, being observant. So I've also seen references to this. Wind represents gentleness. It could represent a gentle ruler in a high position who is admired by the people. So earth represents the multitudes or society or the people. And these people are looking up. They're in admiration, so they're looking up. So in this case, I just did a tower, essentially, and then kind of taking a more of a bird's eye view in terms of it. And I think also thinking about this in light of contemplation, as in observing things. So it's interesting that really both of these in some way relate to viewing something. And we can also kind of look at it here because the liver meridian relates to the element of wood, which relates to vision and the eyes. So I'll have to see if this one also gives us a connection that way too. But just looking at these hexagrams, we wouldn't necessarily see all of them in terms of vision, viewing, observing, but now I can kind of make some new connections with that. So now let's replace these. And set up the next four. So we have 21, 22, 23, and 24. And let me just check all of these. Fire over thunder, mountain over fire. And then we have mountain over earth. And then earth over thunder. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at 21 through 24. So we see 21 and 2 are paired, and then 23 and 24 are paired. And so first, when we look at hexagram 21, biting through, we have fire over thunder. If we take this and we flip it upside down, we get mountain over fire, hexagram 22 adornment. But let's start with biting through. Biting through has another visual image. If we were to look at the hexagram lines as a mouth, the top and bottom would be the lips. All the yin lines are like the open mouth. We can see that there's something inside of the mouth. Okay, and so when we look at biting through, this ideogram usually shows like a mouth and a symbol for divination. The etymology is also about biting, chewing through, gnawing something. When we look at this image, it's like you have to chew through something. So the mouth can't close because there's something in it that needs to be bitten through. There's also a reference to, in the etymology, to a vessel, as in the, like a vessel, like a cauldron. that has a lid. And so the mouth is it's kind of like a vessel, like the lid that goes over top of a pot. But again, we've got something here, maybe so the lid doesn't quite fit. So this hexagram is biting through an obstacle. I think if we think about it in terms of a vessel, we can think of like the vessel is a symbol of family. We have another hexagram called cauldron that we haven't come to yet, but just thinking about eating, being nourished, maybe coming together to eat as a family, but the lid of the pot doesn't close until an obstacle has been removed. The lips can't close, the mouth can't close until you bite down or bite through the food or some problem. So that's one way to look at biting through. I think I did a really good job of figuring out an image for it. So that's really the energy of biting through. We also have fire over thunder, which is really a sign for thunder and lightning. So it's a really dynamic energy. Fire is associated with lightning. So I know a lot of times thunder is associated, like I think symbolically we naturally associate thunder with lightning, but from a trigram perspective, fire is actually lightning. So we have lightning and thunder coming together. So biting through can represent justice. So if you think about radical change, thunder, coupled with the illumination or enlightenment of fire, we get this sense of justice. And so that is the energy of biting through. And in human design, this is called the hunter or huntress. So again, that kind of really dynamic energy, that really kind of strong warrior energy. And then we have something that it seems to come across a little bit softer and gentler with adornment. And this is mountain over fire. The ideogram shows cowrie shells and flowers. I tried to put some of those here. And the etymology and some of the symbolism that I've seen also relates to a pheasant. So fire can also, I think one of the symbols, animal symbols, is a pheasant. So if you think about the brilliant feathers of a pheasant. And then also looking at, if again we look at this as all these lines, we kind of have to squish it down a little bit. Imagine that this is a box. It's just a very plain box. At the bottom, it has a cowrie shell. So if you've seen a cowrie shell, you know it's got like this kind of openness in the middle with the shell on the two sides. So it's kind of like saying it's a plain box that's been adorned with a cowrie shell. And this hexagram is really about adornment. It's about beauty. It's about brilliance. But there's also an energy of kind of not getting too big, like not getting too bright, not getting too much, because we have mountain over the fire. So it's really like the mountain energy is suppressing or stopping some of that brilliance and some of that enthusiasm. So it's just kind of encouraging a more moderate approach. This is one I really have to see it show up a little bit more, I think, in my readings. It really hasn't come up for me too much. Now let's look at 23 and 24. We have mountain over earth. And then if we were to turn it upside down, we have earth over thunder. So stripping away and return, to me, are very much just seasonal. Like they have, I guess, other references, but basically they're just showing us another seasonal reference or time period. I call this stripping away. A lot of references to this are splitting apart, which to me has a very different energy. So the ideogram typically shows a knife and a sign for carving. So I think about like pruning a plant. It also relates to, the etymology is about flaying, F-L-A-Y, to flay, peel, to strip, to strip someone as in like a badge or a position. So to me, this is more about stripping away rather than splitting apart. And it's really about the encroachment of yang by yin. So if we look, we can see yin, 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 and then yang. Now, because we know that this energy goes from the bottom up, we can see kind of like this is a takeover of all the yang energy by yin. So it's like the yin is taking over completely. If we look at this in terms of a time period, this is December 10th through 16th. It's in the zodiac sign of Sagittarius. This would be the week before the winter solstice. And so that's one reason why I put in here like nighttime. This would be like the darkness before the light. This is also a time just like stripping away. So this has actually come up in a reading for me, and it really was a time of just kind of getting rid of stuff in my life that was no longer necessary. It wasn't things that I was consciously giving away. It was literally things were being disposed of in my life. Things were just disappearing. Things were going away. So that's how I see this energy. This is kind of like the next, this to me is right after the winter solstice. So the winter solstice, the time period is actually going to show up in hexagram 2, which is Earth over Earth. This would be the week after that. So if we look at this time period, we're looking at Capricorn, December 22nd through the 28th. So this is the return of light. So we've just moved past the winter solstice, and now the days are going to be, getting brighter and longer. We have Earth over Thunder. We can see we see from the bottom we have Yang and then Yin, 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 Yin. So what it's saying is that the Yang is now returning because it moves upward. So first there's like one Yang line, and then we'll see 2, and then we'll see 3 and 4 and 5 until we get to pure Yang, which we know is hexagram 1. So with this one, for the return, what I depicted, the way I depicted this, was kids playing in the snow, because I wanted the energy of snow. And then we also see the sun like rising because it's the return of the light, but we're still kind of in the darkness. It's still cold outside. It's still not necessarily a great time to be very active, but I think the kids give this new kind of energy and hope for the future. And that's how I see this particular hexagram. So I hope that gives you just an understanding of, or maybe just a perspective. I don't want to say understanding because this is my understanding of the hexagrams. You might have a different understanding, particularly if you're looking at it from, say, human design, even though it's the same hexagrams, but just some of the perspectives might be a little bit different. But I hope that this gives you some background, maybe some information, and also piques your interest a little bit more. So again, this is number 3. So we've got 5 more to go till we get to the end. Thanks for watching.